Hey there, well you probably clicked on this video because you're at least somewhat curious about real estate investment strategies here in Airdrie, Alberta. My name is Brad Walker. I'm a local realtor and investor here in Airdrie, and today we're going to chat about some of the investment strategies right here in our city of Airdrie, Alberta. Now for each strategy, we'll discuss the relevance and success here in Airdrie as a whole, and then get into some of the numbers based on our current market. So this video is going to get pretty numbers heavy, so get ready to nerd out on some investment numbers with me. Now keep in mind that our market is always changing, and the specific numbers in this video are likely to be different depending on when you're watching, especially if it's been a while since this video has been posted. So please make sure to reach out anytime you have questions about investing right here in our city. Now we have 4 investment strategies to go over today, and the last one you might not expect since we're a fairly small city. And if you're used to investing in Ontario, then you might be surprised to find one strategy missing from this list. So go ahead, hit that like button if you want to invest in some real estate, and let's get into it. Now starting off first, let's go into the buy and hold strategy, probably the most common investing strategy out there. And it's also the easiest to calculate your potential return. Now we do have a pretty big renter population here in Airdrie, which means there's a lot of potential tenants for a long-term investment. Depending on the market you buy in and how much of a down payment you make will determine how much cash flow on a rental investment. But this style of investment here in Airdrie is and always will be a good one for the long-term minded investor. If it doesn't cash flow right now, it likely will in the future, and all the while you'll be paying down the mortgage and gaining the equity as it appreciates. Now going through the different options of rental properties to buy, let's go through some examples and see if you'll be able to get a cash flowing investment even with the high interest rates right now. Now starting first with our condos, our current benchmark price for a 2-bedroom condo is $265,000. So using that as our purchase price and assuming we're putting a 20% down payment down, that gives us a mortgage payment of $1,420 per month. And that's using a 6.5% interest rate, and you can get a little bit lower than that right now for an investment, but we're going to use that rate for this video. Now in addition to the mortgage, you'll also need to add in the condo fees, insurance, and taxes for a condo. For a 2-bedroom, I'd say you'd be looking right around $500 for the condo fee on average per month, and about $100 for taxes and insurance each month as well. So add that all up, we've got $2,120 for expenses for the month for a 2-bedroom condo. And now looking at the rental rates for that 2-bedroom condo here in Airdrie, on average you're looking at about $1,800 to $1,900 per month in rent from that condo. So at our benchmark price, you're not going to quite cash flow with that property right now, but there are plenty of condos that sell under our benchmark price. So let's say we bought one at $230,000. That would bring our mortgage down to $1,232 a month and total monthly expenses of $1,932. Now at this price, you'd be looking at more of a break even on the cash flow situation, but you would be able to take part in the potential equity increases over time. Now let's look at investing in a townhouse instead of a condo. Our benchmark price here is $354,000 right now. So again, using that purchase price, your mortgage would be $1,897 per month. And at this price, your townhouse is going to have a condo board, so we still need to add those condo fees, taxes, and insurance. For this townhouse, you can probably expect about $350 for the condo fees every month, and about $150 for insurance, and about $150 for taxes. So all total, your monthly expenses on this property will be about $2,550. Now for rental rates, this townhouse will probably be in the $2,200 range or so. So again, you'd be looking at a few $100s a month of negative cash flow, but there are plenty of townhouses in Airdrie that don't have a condo fee at all. But these ones will cost you a little bit more, probably around $425,000. So recalculating with our new higher mortgage and no condo fees, our monthly expenses nearly stay the same at $2,577 per month. This townhouse can fetch a slightly higher rent of around $2,300 a month. So still not great cash flow on the townhouses. I think you'd be better off with a condo. If you found the right one, you're gonna hit that break-even point with your condo right now. Maybe even get a tiny bit of cash flow, but the townhouses are definitely tricky for cash flow right now in our market. And last but not least, let's look at our detached homes. And for this one, we're going to use a purchase price of $500,000. And at this price, you can get a small resale 2-story home with 3 or 4 bedrooms and possibly a garage. So your mortgage on this home is going to be $2,679 per month, plus about $200 for taxes and $150 for insurance, bringing your total monthly cost to about $3,029. For a rental of this home, you'd likely get around $2,700 or $2,800 of monthly rent. I actually did just have a client that closed on a home just like this, and they actually got $3,000, so that was good for them on the rent side, but on average I'd say you're probably around $2,700 or $2,800. So again, you see here in our current market conditions with 20% down, even with this property, you're a couple $100 of negative cash flow if we use that average rent. But I do have one last scenario for you that's likely to be better than the previous two. If you spent a little more and found something around $550,000 that had a suite, your expenses on that home would be a bit more, like $3,100, but you could rent the upper suite for about $2,200 and the basement suite for about $1,100, which would give you a couple $100 a month in positive cash flow. Now these are all very generic numbers. We use our benchmark prices for all of these examples. So there are cash flowing investments to be found in our city right now. We just have to get a little bit more strategic with it. So if you're looking for a rental investment property here in the city, be sure to reach out so we can have a chat and find you the right property. And now moving on to the second investment strategy here in Airdrie, the good old fix and flip. I find in the HGTV real estate world, flipping homes is made out to be this easy money, no problems investment strategy. Now, while that's not exactly the case, there is money to be made in renovating old homes and reselling them. But does that work in a small city like Airdrie? Well, I personally have never done any flips here in the city, but I know that there is some done every single year. So I dove into the last few years of sales history to see what I could come up with. And what I found was in the last year, there's only been 6 flips that sold in Airdrie that were purchased on the MLS strictly for the intention of flipping for a profit. Now, of course, I can't see the data of any off-market private sales. So there's more than 6 that happened, but I found 6 homes in my research specifically. Now, when it comes to flipping, if you get a home under market value or that it's damaged and needs a lot of work, you can flip houses anywhere you are. But in bigger cities like Calgary to the south of us, in some neighborhoods, you can buy homes in certain neighborhoods at their current market value, being an old home, and be able to renovate that and flip them for a profit. But that's not what I found for Airdrie. For each of the flips that I found, they were either purchased at a significant discount and they renovated to make a profit, or they weren't bought at a discount, and you can see by the purchase and sale numbers that not a lot of profit was made. So not a whole lot to say about flips right now in Airdrie. I wouldn't bank on it here as your entire investment strategy, but if you find a good deal below market value, then you can definitely make some money. And that brings us now to our third investment strategy here in Airdrie, and the one I also have some experience in, and that's short-term rentals. So my wife and I actually operated 2 Airbnb units here in Airdrie from October 2021 to April 2023, and if you want to learn more about our experience specifically with that, feel free to click the card in the top corner of this video here and watch the video about Airbnb in Airdrie. But I know what you want to know is, can you make money with a short-term rental investment here in Airdrie? Well, first off, if you're buying a property strictly for investment purposes and you want to give short-term rental a try, make sure that it's a property that will make a decent long-term rental if you decide to move away from short-term rentals and go to a long-term rental in the future. We're seeing a lot of cities around the world making more strict regulations around short-term rentals, so you need to know that that could be coming for Airdrie as well. Now let's look at the listing competition first. So when we opened our Airbnbs in Airdrie in 2021, there were 23 listings in all of Airdrie, and we owned 2 of them. So right from the get-go, our suites were fully booked and bringing in great revenue. But over time, as it became a more popular strategy to invest in, we saw more and more hosts coming to the market, and now on Airbnb here in Airdrie, you can find 168 listings. Now, this means that there's a lot more competition for hosts, and vacancy rates will be higher than they once were. But let's get down to some numbers for you. So starting off, I wouldn't suggest doing anything short-term rental with a condo board involved, because I find it's just too risky and they can shut you down at any time. So no condos or townhomes with a condo fee or a strata. So we'll use numbers for our freehold townhome and detached home we used in the long-term rental examples. Now for the freehold townhome at a $425,000 purchase price, again, your mortgage, taxes, and insurance came to about $25.77 per month. But now that we're doing a short-term rental with it, we also have to add in utilities, which is about $300 a month, internet, about $100 a month, and restock items such as toilet paper, coffee, cleaning supplies, and things like that, which you could budget probably about $100 a month. So after all that, we're looking at a monthly expense of around $3,100. And after looking around Airbnb, it looks like you could charge anywhere for $120 to $150 per night for this home. Taking into account weekly and monthly discounts, let's say you average $130 per night. So at that nightly rate, if you rented it out 100% of the nights a month, that would give you $3,900 a month in revenue, which sounds pretty good. That's $800 of cash flow right off the top, but we gotta dig into it a little bit further. Now, I looked at a bunch of the townhouse units on Airbnb and they don't seem to have a lot of bookings. Honestly, most of them looked like they were getting about 25 to 50% occupancy. So at 50% occupancy, you'd be looking at only about $2,000 a month in revenue, which is not nearly enough to cover your costs. So I'd say unless you own a townhouse with a much lower interest rate, it's probably not gonna be worth it. Now let's look at the detached homes, and we'll be using the same detached home that we used earlier, and that was a $500,000 detached home, and our monthly expenses were $3,029. Again, let's add in our utilities, internet, and restock items, and we're looking like more around $3,600 for expenses on this home as an Airbnb. And looking at listings again, from what I found, it looks like you could charge anywhere from $140 to $180 per night right now. And again, with the weekly and monthly discounts for longer stays, let's say you averaged $160 per night. So at 100% occupancy, 30 nights rented, that would be a revenue of $4,800, which is great, but we still have to factor in a more realistic occupancy rate. Now for those detached homes, their occupancy actually looks better than the townhouses did, more like 60 to 70%. So let's say you're on the higher end, 70% occupancy. So that would mean that your revenue would be about $3,400 for the month, which unfortunately again comes up slightly short from cash flowing. And keep in mind, we didn't factor in any of the additional work hosting a short-term rental requires. Things like managing the guests, cleaning between every guest, dealing with issues at the home during the guest stays and things like that. So in our current market, I'd say it doesn't really make sense to buy an investment property strictly for short-term rental, but there is a scenario that it could make sense. Now this would be a version of house hacking where you buy a home with an upper and lower suite and you rent one out and live in the other. And if you did this with a short-term rental, it makes it a lot easier to manage since you live on site and you're not as worried about the monthly cash flow because your renter would be more of a mortgage helper. Now short-term renting out a basement and living upstairs could bring in about $1,200 per month. But if you want to make a bit more, then if you live downstairs and rent out the upper levels, you could be making around $2,000 to $2,500 per month from that short-term rental, which nearly pays for the entire mortgage itself. Now looking at those numbers though, you'd get a similar number if you were to house hack it on the upper or lower suite with a long-term tenant though, so you could get that same revenue while not having to deal with all the added expenses and management issues that come with owning an Airbnb. All in all, right now in our market, I'm not a huge fan of short-term rentals as a primary investing strategy. I just think there's far too much competition in the market right now and a lot of likely upcoming rules from the city regulating these things a lot more. All right, now moving on to our last investment strategy here in Airdrie, and that's building infills, finding an old home on a big lot, tearing down the home and building a new one. Now, believe it or not, we have had some infill activity here in the recent years in Airdrie, mostly in the downtown area where you'd expect it, where you can find those older homes and bigger lots. And there's actually one for sale right now where the lot was purchased for around $200,000 and a huge home is being built there that's listed for sale at $1.295 million. Now I don't know the build cost details on that one though, so I can't say how much profit's going to be made by the builder, and it's also not sold yet either. It's been listed for quite a while. So we don't have a lot of numbers for infills right now, as we've only seen a few be complete, and most of them were for personal residence and not for resale profit. But just know that as the city ages more, we're likely going to see more and more of this type of investment happening. So while at the moment we're not personally considering it for our investments, in the not so far future, we'll likely be looking into it further to see what the potential there might be. All right, well, there you have our 4 investing strategies here in Airdrie, Alberta, and of course you can mix and match some of them to customize your investing strategy, such as the buy, renovate, rent, and refinance strategy that will pretty much always work no matter where you are if you buy a property at a good price. But the one that you didn't see on our list today is buying pre-construction homes to assign at a later date before possession. Now, this has been a big strategy out in Ontario for quite a while. You can buy a pre-construction condo, hold the contract while it's being built for 2 to 4 years, and then sell that contract before you take possession and profit the difference. Now this worked very well in Ontario when the market was exploding up, but now you pay such a premium for new build homes that this very rarely works unless it's timed extremely well, which is really just gambling at that point. So I would highly advise against attempting this strategy here or anywhere right now with the current market conditions. So as far as investing in Airdrie, I think the best option currently and will continue to be is the long-term buy and hold investments, because even though huge cash flow is not as easy to find as it was a few years ago, you still have to remember that with each mortgage payment on that investment, you're paying down that mortgage principal. So even if your cash flow is break even, you're still coming out ahead every month in terms of net worth because your tenant is paying down your mortgage. But that strategy being my favorite is partly because of my investing bias, and there's definitely money to be made in the building and renovating if that's more your specialty. Well, if you're still here after all of that, thank you very much for watching. Please hit that like button so more people like you can watch this video. And if you have any questions at all about investing in Airdrie, or however big or small your question is, or if you're planning a move here, please reach out to me right away. Use the buyer consultation link below to get in touch with me right away. And again, my name is Brad Walker, your local Airdrie realtor, and we'll see you in the next video.